Yeah, I think we are live, but let's just check just in case on my channel because I don't want us to like start talking and then there's nothing. Let's see. Yeah,
Yes.
I think we are live. Yeah.
Okay.
So Zarathustra. Who's the background noise coming from again? I can't seem to find who, but anyway. Um, can anyone see? Okay.
Wait a minute. I'm not hearing any background noise, so it could be from me. So are you?
Sense.
Hang on, just a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess we started streaming a bit too soon. Guess I could end the stream and start again, but no. Let's just carry on like this. So I guess yeah. So Tori, did you get any time to check out? No, I mean you have already seen Zarathustra's videos, but you haven't seen. You haven't read his book. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. I did, however, just finish watching his video on his Nietzschean liberalism.
Yes, I'm sure
I
that.
thought it was good.
Yeah, I think it will be useful because in my review as well. So basically, I reviewed Zarathustra's book, and in that, I think basically I wasn't just responding to the book, some specifically, so because he's making both uh, similar connected points in both places. And thoughts. What about you? Did you get enough time to?
I'm in more or less the same situation as Torin. I've watched the videos, and I watched Nietzschean liberalism one pretty recently.
What about you, Heraclius?
I wasn't entirely sure what the stream was going to be about. I just knew it was going to be Nietzschean, so I just read some genealogy of morals, which I read a couple of years past to prepare, and that's all.
Yeah, it's always a fun book. Zarathustra, are you ready yet? Huh? No, I guess not. Yeah, what else is there to talk about? So, yeah, tell us a bit about genealogy then. Heraclius.
Well, genealogy is about Nietzsche essentially trying to discover what are the origins of the terms good and bad, good and evil. His essential thesis is that good.
I think
Okay.
I think Zarathustra is back. Are you back?
Yeah, just a minute. Can you hear me now? I mean, is the background sound gone?
Yeah, the background sound is okay. So
Okay, so that was the problem. I just needed to switch the mic. Okay, okay, let's go.
So Zarathustra, when and how did you get the idea to write your book, Will to Power and Nothing Besides? Oh no, yeah, I think that was the title. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the book it's actually my thesis, my second degree in philosophy thesis, which I wrote about 10 years ago, something like that. Little more. And then I just we worked it into a book. Basically, that's it. It's basically the thesis. And yeah, Nietzsche is just as I was studying philosophy, I realized that a lot of my thoughts and insights and Nietzsche has already pretty much articulated them, and which I would say that I would actually came to it through kind of David Bowie, just drawing insights from his work and coming to conclusions and all that. And then as I was reading Nietzsche, I realized that he's already said a lot of it. Yeah, so and as I say in the book, at some point I realized that the ontology, this metaphysics of will to power, which previous interpreters did not pay much attention to, answers a lot of the so-called contradictions in his work. If you really just if you follow it and you understand it, it solves a lot of the alleged problems in his philosophy, the alleged self-contradictions. So this was why I wrote. Actually, it started as seminar work, small seminar work, which that was the beginning of it, and then I developed it into the thesis, and then I made the book. I wrote the book out of it.
So you mentioned that I think it was on Twitter when I tweeted my review of it at you that that in some places at least I seem to have understood your point better than the academics looking at your thesis. What did they misunderstand?
Yes. Look, first of all, academy professors, when they read papers written by students, even thesis papers, they don't really put themselves into it. They don't make the effort to understand it. Because they don't really have the time. They treat it as just a nuisance. So the professor was supposed to grade it. So they just, I guess, read it once, and you have to read it more than once to understand it. And also, because I'm basically offering a new reading of Nietzsche, something quite a radical new reading. I think I've made many many insights that I haven't seen anyone else before make. So it's hard for to understand it, certainly in one reading. And I think that for you, after you've been watching my videos and all that, it's a lot easier to comprehend. Because for professors, they are familiar with previous interpretations, so they read from that perspective.
Yes.
So it didn't really.
I understand. I mean, especially, I think I had kind of the opposite problem because the last section of your book is about previous interpretations of Nietzsche, and I hadn't heard of any of them earlier before. So I think that was probably the hardest part in the book for me to get.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
I guess what can you think of any I guess what are the key insights which you think you have made which others had not before you?
Like I said, the ontology, so the metaphysics, because Nietzsche doesn't believe in that we can figure out the truth of the world. Basically, he regards reality as chaos, which with no rules and no laws. So you can't really. So there is no metaphysics that is the truth. But if you follow his thought, you realize that one must create a metaphysics to basically to stamp his own will to power basically on the chaos. to put your own order on the chaos, you create a metaphysics which you then live by. You create you create a metaphysics which from which you draw your values and all that, and your way of life. And the metaphysics is basically just whatever whatever facts are known at that moment. If you can create a metaphysical worldview that basically explains all of them and does not contain any self-contradictions, then you have a metaphysics that works, that you can and that explains the world. Basically, you stamped your own will on the world, and you can live by it. So and once it comes to the notion of will to power as the driving force of basically of the humans, of living beings, that's the thing that he presents in Thus Spake Zarathustra, the idea that this is the driving force, the will to power. Then in the next book, which is Beyond Good and Evil, just in one aphorism, he says, let's make this experiment. Let's expand it and say that will to power is not just the thing that drives all living beings, but the thing that drives everything and is everything. And from that, basically, arises the metaphysics, which he then tries to explicate in the book that is known today as The Will to Power, which he never completed because he kind of collapsed before that. But there's a lot there, which you can create a metaphysic from. So so this is the basic thing that and I try to show in my book. That's the third chapter in my book. Just this metaphysics that basically says will to power is all there is. It's the thing that the universe is made of. And by that explain all the phenomena. So that's one important insight which I don't no one has ever presented. The other one is the I would say the salvation theory, which again I didn't see anyone realize it, that Thus Spake Zarathustra, the book, there's a story there of Zarathustra presenting first one salvation theory, which is the Superman, which collapses towards the second part of the end of the second part of the book. And in the third part, basically he deals with this collapse and he overcomes it, self-overcomes it, basically. He creates himself anew with a new metaphysics, which is based on the eternal recurrence. And then that becomes the salvation theory. And I didn't see anyone understand this, which I think is very, very clear if you read deeply into it. And I'm currently doing a reading of Thus Spake Zarathustra on my second channel, and if you follow it, we will tell that story.
Yeah, it's
You're following it.
Zarathustra's second channel is pretty good. I haven't been following the Bowie videos much, but I am following the Nietzsche videos where he's going through the Spake Zarathustra. So thoughts. I mean, having heard what you have heard, and also, at the start of Zarathustra's book, I think he as he said, he says that he writes the book so as to answer so-called contradictions in Nietzsche's thought, and also against those who, for instance, think that Nietzsche is just an artist or a poet. Yeah. I
I
mean,
see where you are going. Go on.
so I mean, I think I'm not sure whether you exactly said that. I mean,
No, I did say it, but go on. Finish with your question.
I mean, I think you did say that you thought that he was more of an artist or a poet of some kind,
Mhm.
and that probably because of the contradictions, which Zarathustra might. So he might have some answers to them. So I guess could you tell us what you think the problems are with Nietzsche's thought? Why you think he's more of an artist?
First of all, I would like to qualify my comment. The fact that I've said that Nietzsche is I've defined Nietzsche as more of a poet than a philosopher. It is not meant to be an insult to Nietzsche. I'm not saying he's writing stuff with no value, he's just writing poetry, because poetry to me has got quite a value. It is a distinction of language and method, if anything. As Zarathustra just said, it in particular when talking about Thus Spoke, Nietzsche organizes his argument as a narrative, and this while obviously it has value, it has the complication that probably is at the basis of the whole phenomenon that we are speaking about here, of the fact that people might have misunderstood the point of Nietzsche and the point that Superman, that Übermensch is only a passage of his argument. That may have something to do with the fact that, by definition, when crafting a narrative instead of crafting an argument, he doesn't define the terms in the beginning in a way that you would expect from people from other philosophers, basically. So when I'm saying that he's a poet, it is not meant like. It's just a poet. He's just a poet. He hasn't written anything of real value. It means that he's speaking differently from how you would expect. He's speaking differently from how you would expect someone that is attempting to to place a metaphysical assumption. Let us say.
Yeah. This goes to the argument between the Enlightenment and the Romantics. The Enlightenment philosophers were about building up, an argument, and reaching, conclusions in the end, and getting closer to the truth with that and all that.
I would say that it is the one of the few things that Enlightenment philosophers do right. When we talk about philosophy in itself, that in discarding Aquinas and everything, at least they didn't discard the idea of building up an argument.
Yes, the Romantics, and we're talking about the early Romantics. The early Romantic writers came up in the 1790s. People like Schlegel and Schleiermacher, and they wrote in fragments. And the idea was that a fragment is just you just take a part of reality and just look at it and achieve a certain insight that kind of cuts through reality and gets to the truth. And just a glimpse of the truth with that, with just this fragment. And this Nietzsche is the greatest at that, and you're talking about almost 100 years later. So he was already a romantic that was a lot more sophisticated and kind of achieved kind of a mixture between Romanticism and Enlightenment. But so he writes in fragments, in aphorisms. But first of all, so many of them that you can if you just you can basically build from it. So this is why you need someone, an interpreter, someone like me, yes, so who comes and puts it in order. but the idea is that because he believes that reality is chaotic, that there is no point in writing. He's a philosopher of becoming. Yeah, he's not a philosopher of being. So there is no point in creating an orderly argument because you're not trying to capture any truth about the world, but you capture glimpses of all sorts of insights that cut through into basically the reality maybe that is at the moment or whatever, this is basically, you're talking about two different worldviews that are, it's being versus becoming, and it's enlightenment versus romanticism. And the Romantics wrote basically poetry that they wrote in a more poetic style, and the idea was that this is how you get closer to the truth. That the way the Enlightenment are doing it is not going to lead there. This actually goes back to, even you would say, even the argument between rationality and, let's say, mysticism, or the idea that the human mind cannot decipher the secrets of the universe, but humans have other faculties that with which they can connect to the truth. So I mean, this goes back basically, you can say, to the argument of Athens versus Jerusalem.
Of Aristotle against Plato.
No, they're both rationalists. Yeah, I get what you mean by Plato, because Plato also, there is this flashes of truth, but so there is a bit of a romantic in Plato, but he's still you get closer to the truth with dialectic, with thinking, with what we're talking about is someone like Saint Paul, who just says that philosophy will not lead you. You can get only so far with philosophy. To actually connect to the truth, you need faith, hope, and love. You need to be at one with Jesus, with Christ.
I've been famous to agree with the fact that that both faculties have their place. The point in here then is that Nietzsche, in saying both that the universe is chaotic and then that the will to power is the foundation of the universe, regardless of each individual person, making a point similar to that of Schopenhauer, if we want to be a bit like approximative with it. Isn't he then making metaphysical assumption of the universal kind?
It's not an assumption; it's a theory. Again, it's stamping it's stamping your will on reality. So you can create whatever you want if it works.
I wanted to ask a question on that. From that perspective, then, would not great people like, let's say, Confucius, Muhammad, Jesus, Zoroaster, from Nietzsche's perspective, would those not be beings of like great overcoming who have imposed their metaphysics upon the world?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And he the problem is there's a lot of people who he respects immensely, but also blames for taking us in the wrong direction with their power, with people like Socrates or Pascal or Schopenhauer, which he respects them for having this power to basically impose their will on reality. But he said that what they offered was the ideas that they offered was a negation of the will, and took us all in the wrong direction. Um, so in the one hand, it shows great power to negate basically what you are made of. When you negate, you basically the will to power is driving you, and the ideas that they created were basically about self-repression uh, so you need great power to create uh, these ideas and repress yourself when you're driven by this need to grow. And uh, so from one perspective, they were great people, who and monks and all that. He all those who hold ascetic ideals, he respects them immensely for their strength, but also blames them for leading us in a wrong direction.
Well,
Yeah.
if I might jump in, from his perspective, if reality is not intelligible, if the point essentially is to impose your own metaphysics, by what right does he have to complain that their metaphysics suppresses the will to power? Isn't that just a show of their own superior will to power? Or is he just essentially objecting that I want my will to power to be first, and maybe you should want your will to power to be first?
No, he's objecting to the fact that they tell you to suppress yourself, and this comes before he invents the idea of the theory of will to power and the idea of will to power. He was always against self-negation. If you read even
Yeah, I've no. Yeah, that's something that comes across very clearly, and I think is actually one of the more interesting parts of him. But I guess sort of like, if you can't say anything definitive around the world around you, how can you proclaim that the other's will to power is wrong any more than your will to power is?
you base a theory. That's your philosophy. That's your worldview. And from your worldview, they are wrong from your perspective. And again,
So would the response? Yeah.
Yeah, and this is why I know I criticize him for going too far in his later writings, where he actually talks about kind of forcing people to live by his values.
Mhm.
Well, and this comes only in the writings that he never published. Yeah, that's the last book, The Will to Power. He wrote it, jotted it in his notebook, so we don't know if he would have published it, but he actually goes there in a few aphorisms where he mentions that just forcing people to forcing the masses to overcome themselves and to live more basically adopt master's morality and not slave morality, and so again the ontology is the metaphysics is meant to is a theory that is meant to explain the ethics, and the ethics comes from the ethics comes much sooner, and the ethics comes from just, I would say, his own, instincts, which tells them, which just rejected this whole everything puritanical and everything that is that tells him that the powers of the of the body have to be repressed. Look, there is a shift there, and I don't know if I mentioned. I don't remember if I mentioned it in my book, but up until the gay science, he's basically just criticizing and he's saying that we can't know any truth. Then, at the beginning of the Will to Science, he presents the will to the gay science. At the beginning of the gay science, he presents aphorism number 1. He claims that we are the product of millions of years of evolution, and we have to assume, therefore, that our instincts have developed in an evolutionary way, so they are good for us. So we need to basically set them free, channel them in constructive and not destructive ways, but it will be healthier for us if we set them free, if we set all our instincts free. And this is already saying something positive about the world. And again, how do you know? I mean, if you basically say that we can't know anything, then how do you even know that the evolutionary theory is right? Yeah. So this is where Nietzsche basically, he switches and he starts to put forth arguments that are basically not based in basically just based in faith.
By the way, somebody has got their Discord notifications on.
Okay, I think maybe it's me. Hang on. How do I set this off?
No, it's not me.
So how do?
No, I think I just unmuted.
Mute, unmute.
Yeah, I think I muted it. So
okay, let's wait.
we'll still have someone.
Okay.
Okay.
I was just gonna ask because I was thinking of it while you were saying this. I think what Heraclius, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Heraclius. Yeah, he's an old Byzantine emperor.
Okay, cool. I think I can kind of phrase what he was asking in a slightly different way. I was thinking of a C.S. Lewis quote where he says something along the lines of to say a line is one line is crooked is to imply the existence of a straight line. And I think what he's asking is how could Nietzsche say the world is crooked if he has no if there's no reference to a straight world, if you will? Is it just Nietzsche's personal preference?
Yes, it's based in his. It's based in his basically instincts. It's his. I mean, he would say, and if we follow his, it comes out of his battle with his illness, which gave him a sense of pride and joy and just fighting against it and overcoming it. Gave him the greatest joy he ever felt, and he wants to create, so he wants to create a way of life based on this joy.
Yeah.
And everything basically comes from that. So it's basically his ideas try to explain why overcoming something like that brings you joy, and then create the metaphysics around that. So it's basically.
Now, is the fact that the metaphysics you create has to bring internal joy to yourself, does he consider that to be absolutely paramount?
It's basically I didn't get exactly what you were asking. Can you ask again?
I'm sort of asking, is it important to Nietzsche that if you're going to impose your own metaphysics, that the metaphysics that you are imposing is one that brings you joy, one that seems naturally true to you and like does bring you happiness and freedom and all that?
Yes, it has to be more powerful than the worldview that you held before, and more powerful means more joyful in Nietzsche. Power and happiness are correlated in Nietzsche's thought. The power brings happiness, and happiness brings power. And this is what he means by power. Power is when you when you create a worldview that basically things that brought you suffering before, you transform them into things that bring you joy. And I think that I saw you. I don't remember what I saw, but I saw you guys having a little problem with that, with understanding that. Okay, we'll talk about that later. But I just want to say that this is basically the beginning of existentialist thought and what is called basically a phenomenology, because phenomenology, which Husserl began around just a few years later, it's about taking a certain phenomena and exploring it, phenomenon, and exploring it, and trying to get to the bottom of it. And basically, this is what Nietzsche did with his with this feeling of of battling against his illness and feeling joy by overcoming it. He started to explore it, and basically from that developed his metaphysics, his ethics, and then his metaphysics. He developed an ethics that is about self-overcoming and joyful, and then the metaphysics is meant to basically ground this ethics in the worldview that also explains the universe. But he would say, and if you read the beginning of the preface, I think of the genealogy of morals, he said that he says that at age 13 he already wrote something that was against the morality of the time. Because he had a problem with the fact that it is self-negation, that it tells you to suppress yourself instead of when he felt that his instincts are actually healthy, and it's unhealthy to suppress yourself, and and you should you should build a morality, you should build an ethics that basically liberates the instincts and just controls them or channels them in constructive directions. But yeah.
Right. I guess what I'm sort of getting at is if he's taking the perspective of you should impose your own metaphysics, but your metaphysics must be something that is real to you, something that's truly powerful.
Yeah.
Well, in that perspective, I guess you could say he's almost speaking then that he's almost saying that your metaphysics should be divine or should speak to divineness. I mean, you can define divine many ways, but in a way, if you're saying like this is like a truth that should be for like all humans and should like speak to humans, that's sort of like one way of saying divine almost. Or I guess if someone else could come along and say to Nietzsche, well, I'm just going to ignore that part about it having to speak to you. I'm just going to impose a metaphysics. I don't really care about whether it speaks to me or not. I just think this is useful to me. Well, I guess without that little part, which admittedly Nietzsche does admit to, that it needs to speak to truth and whatnot, then anyone can just enforce any nonsense and say, this is my metaphysics. Deal with it. I have a sword.
Yes, and that's the problem in when that's always a problem when you and I mean he would say, the universe is chaotic and we have to deal with it. Anyone who just imposes you it's for Nietzsche, life is war. Yeah, it's a struggle between different perspectives, and the you would just say that you will not be happy if you just impose just a metaphysics, just might is right. Yeah, but so
No,
yeah.
I mean, that's fair, but at the same time, he doesn't really have any right to object. And I mean, there are people who very clearly are self-destructive, not interested in happiness, or at the very least, how shall we say, force the happiness out of themselves habitually, who are just sort of, shall we say, power-grubbing psychos that don't really care about truth. And it seems to me that Nietzsche doesn't really have an argument against those people other than preference.
Does he have an argument? I mean, he will just say that you construct yourself in a way that those people can't harm you because
That's fair.
you will just enjoy whatever they do to you.
Thoughts? Do you have? Yeah. Go
If you are if you are so powerful that everything brings you joy, then they will not be able to harm you.
Yeah, isn't that essentially Die Gedankens sind frei? Thoughts make you free.
In not free, but yeah, happy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's an old German song, I think from like the 1850s or so, where basically the guy's singing about how no matter how I get tortured, I'm in my mind, I'm free, they can't harm me.
And it goes back to the Stoics. Yeah. So, and if you read, I mean, I remember reading Marcus Aurelius and realizing how much he preempted Nietzsche in many things, in many ideas. And yeah, but
that's something I would agree with.
I said something I would agree with. Thoughts. You often make jokes about when it comes to Nietzsche, the fact that he lost his.
I make jokes because I'm memeing around,
I know, but like about Nietzsche, basically losing to his disease when he sees horse being mistreated. The horsey jokes.
Well, yes, it is in the sense that that episode seems to bring him back to a condition in which he seems to agree more with slave morality than with master morality at that point, because he doesn't he doesn't seem to agree with Marcus Aurelius at that point about pain. If the mistreatment of an horse can influence him to that point. One thing
we don't know what boat is about. But yeah,
it's mostly a joke, man.
Yeah. Yes, and the will to power of the virus in the end defeated the will to power of Nietzsche. Yeah. So,
you could say that.
what can you do?
I think it's in his latest. I'm in his latest video on Nietzsche. Zarathustra made the point in his video called his about his Nietzschean liberalism. I think he made the point. I'm not sure whether it was in the book or in the video, but that basically Nietzsche is fundamentally a left-wing thinker, because he's in favor of change. Would anyone disagree with this? I guess no.
I think this is a confusion that comes
Yeah.
from a dualism inside of Enlightenment thinking, in which individualism is conflated with right wing, because in America, the virtues of individualism are the traditional virtues and are upholded by the right wing. But I think, honestly, that Nietzsche is. Will be best understood as beyond the left and the right, as understood by modern politics.
I agree
Well,
with that.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that. I mean, I just say that I mean, I'm a liberal, yeah. So how do I connect to Nietzsche with this idea of because I believe in change and eternal change and rebellion. This is the essence of my liberalism, and this is where I find Nietzsche. You can connect him to liberalism. You can, but you can connect. Basically, every philosopher, every great philosopher, is beyond politics. Maybe except Marx, but yes, you can take them all in many directions.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
this
mean,
is I'm not saying in the video that Nietzsche is a liberal. Yeah, I'm actually saying that he's not. But I'm calling it my Nietzschean liberalism because I say I'm taking his ideas, and into basically into to a liberal in a liberal direction, and I'm showing how you can do that. And I'm saying that liberalism will be better if we take Nietzsche's ideas and infuse them into it.
I see.
I can agree with that.
I mean-
I think one of the main problem with modern liberalism is this like attempt to be moralistic, which has no basis in in the liberal mind view, in my opinion. If they were to go full Nietzsche, at least it will be coherent.
I mean, my definition of left and right for some time has been like left is chaos, right is order. From that perspective, Nietzsche would sort of be both and neither by both obviously being chaotic and rebellious, but also wanting to impose his new order.
Yeah, and he affected exactly in that way.
Whereas, let's say, I mean, obviously people will have differing opinions, but something like, let's say, if you took the opinion of Marxism that fundamentally it was a means to rebellion and that the worldview it sets up for later is incoherent, that would make it fundamentally of the left because it is fundamentally about the rebellion. There is no importance put to the order left afterwards. If you took those assumptions.
Zarathustra, can you think of any point in my review where I misunderstood what you were trying to say?
I read it a while ago, so I can't remember now. I didn't have time now because I went to the hospital to read it again.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a pretty good one. Pretty good review. I'm trying to remember because I remember seeing you discussing stuff, you and Ella Fox, and just kind of there was something there that I can't remember it now. So, but I would like to maybe to talk about the what brings about the downfall of the Superman. the idea of the Superman is that you reach a point where everything is joyful to you, and part of it, and this I think this is the thing that you had problems with. This is something that I think you had a problem understanding. Transforming your past in a way that you say that everything that happened is how you wanted it to happen. So in a way that it brings you joy, basically, that everything that happened to you in the past will also bring you joy. Now, what does that? That does not mean changing your just psychologically changing it. It means that you recreate yourself in a way that transforms the past. And I'll give you just a mundane for my life. Yeah, first time I gave a lecture in the university, I sucked. It was it was a bad memory. Then I got better at it, and so now I can look back at it and realize that this was necessary for me to do that first lecture, something that I learned from. Yeah. So by transforming myself and becoming a better lecturer, I basically transform the past in a way that I can look back at that first lecture and say, this is how it should have been. Yeah, this is how I want it.
Yes.
I needed to go through that. So this is how you transform your past. So this is okay. So this is what, and he says that this is salvation. Salvation is when humanity reaches a point where we look at our pasts and we say about all of it, this is how it had to be to get us to this point of happiness. Yeah. And look, it's actually, if you think about it, this is actually what salvation theories usually do. If you talk about, let's say, the religious idea of heaven, of afterlife, heaven and afterlife, all the sufferings that you suffered in life brought you to heaven. Yeah. So then you sit in heaven and you look back and you say, yes, I needed to go through that to get to here. So it wasn't a bad thing; it was a good thing. And so now Nietzsche does not believe in the afterlife, but even the if you take the Enlightenment and later ideas of basically salvation, which is utopia, a future utopia. If you take the Hegel and Marx and all that, all those different utopian historical ideas, it's also it's a way to basically say about why are we suffering now? We are suffering now so we can get to a point where we can look back when humanity is happy, when humanity lives in a utopia, and then we can look back and say, we needed to go through that growth, and when the growth had involved pains and sufferings, but we got here. So this is also the idea of the Superman. The idea of the Superman is that we will get to the point where humanity is happy, where everybody is so powerful that everything brings them joy, and then they can look back also on history and say this is how it had to be. Then, however, basically Zarathustra meets a soothsayer who tells him that history is circular, that basically everything returns. They all like the Ecclesiastes of everything, nothing new under the sun. And from that he develops the idea of the eternal return, which is basically the idea that everything returns exactly the same. Now that means that your life is eternal. So because you will live it again and again. And by that he basically defeats death. Yeah. So the death is something that brings us suffering. The idea of death, the idea that we will die one day, but he overcame it by this idea of the eternal return, by saying that no, we will be we will be reborn and live this life again, again and again for eternity. So our life is eternal. However, this presents a problem, because if everything returns, it means that this point that we reach at the end is not the end point.
Also temporary.
Yeah, it's just a temporary point, and so the suffering is not justified by it. Yeah, and that brings a collapse to his theory. The theory of the Superman collapses. It's no longer salvation. He cannot you cannot call it a salvation if that ideal state at the end is not actually the end, but everything will collapse again, and everything will return. And then he switches it to he overcomes it. He overcomes himself, and he recreates himself anew, a more powerful, by saying that okay, before that, the idea of how do we get to the Superman is by self-overcoming. There are these moments of where you recreate yourself, and this recreation is the most joyful thing, the most powerful. It's a joyful feeling, and it is the most powerful feeling that there is. More powerful than any suffering. And he says that if the joy at that moment is so great that if someone told you that you will relive this joy again and again, you will say, "Yeah, I want. Everything was worth it. If everything in my life was necessary to bring me to this point of joy, then it was worth it." And I say everything on everything that happened to me and everything that will happen to me, because it's all part of that circle that brought me to this point. So basically, this is an eternal heaven. Okay, so your life brought you to an eternal heaven, because this point will return again and again in eternity. So you basically you get to the same idea, that we get to a point where we say yes about everything. Everything was necessary. This is how we want it, because it brought us to this eternal heaven.
Thoughts?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. So the idea that this moment is not technically an eternity, but you will return to it. Therefore, from that perspective, it's an eternity, and it is such a great moment that it is worth all the trial and the tribulation and the time that will come to get back to it.
So I mean,
Okay, several things to say. Go on first. I'm sorry.
no, you go.
No, you go.
Well, I did have. Admittedly, I'm going to be directing us to a little different part of Nietzsche. I don't know if you want to stay on this part.
Yeah, I think it would be better if you stayed on this, and if first thoughts made his point.
Okay, several things to say then. First of all, I'm not trying to be inflammatory, but at this point, when we get at this point of Nietzsche, we are basically talking about theology in a way. We kind of all agree about this.
We all talking about what?
Theology.
Oh. No, that's metaphysics, not theology.
Yeah, okay, but this framing is metaphysics in a theological way, in such a way, perhaps in the same way as also other thinkers have done. There is this general criticism.
Hang on a minute, I have a phone call, so I'll mute myself. Just a minute.
All right. So I guess in the meantime, if you could make your point, Heraclius.
It was more going to be a question I was going to give to Zarathustra Serpent, although maybe Fox can answer it a little. There seemed to me a little bit of a tension in Nietzsche between how, like, the discrepancy between master and slave morality. Like, obviously, master morality is you go out and conquer, and he looks down on slave morality as just sort of accepting things. Yet at the same time, if you are the one that says, like, let's say, well, this person can't harm me, die Gedanken sind frei, my thoughts are my own, that basically lines up with the slave morality he was condemning in various priests and whatnot. And there's actually a little passage I poked out here where he said, like, they submitted to punishment as you submit to illness or misfortune or death, with that brave, unrebellious fatalism that still gives the Russians, for example, an advantage over us Westerners in the way they handle life.
So
Yeah, he seems to have like a natural attraction to that, sort of like braveness of spirit, and just sort of like naturally just pushing through adversity and accepting it, and not essentially going apeshit at it.
yeah, I think
But is that not similar to the same slave morality that he condemned in priests and whatnot, who simply accept their lot?
But I'm back, by the way. I don't know. Again, it's over accepting and overcoming is not the same thing. And the priests, he actually says that they created slave morality out of their will to power. It's a way
Yes.
to overcome because they are too weak to fight against the warriors that enslave them. They basically overcome them by creating this morality, which makes them superior in their mind to them. So yeah, I missed a little bit of what you said before, so I don't really know where it comes from.
yeah,
But
basically his point was that if you are overcoming your, like, if you have like a sickness or something, and you're coming up with a justification for it, how is that? Because you're coming up with a justification for it because you can't actually do anything about it. You can't change the fact that you are sick. So how is that any different from what the priests were doing by coming up with a justification for a situation that they could not change physically?
the justification for the illness is that it's not that it's not an acceptance of the illness. He's battling against the illness, and
but he still can't change the fact that he's sick.
And in a physical sense, he didn't.
But he felt better. The gay science was written after he overcame a very bad bout of the disease, in which he could hardly function. He overcame it.
So why aren't the priests feeling better then, in the same way, with their justification?
I mean, the priests are feeling better if they create this slave morality, which makes them feel superior.
Then what is the problem with it?
And also, I'd say
it's a problem with the morality itself, which causes people to negate themselves and negate others, and suppress others.
I think
the thing that they created was good for their own, for their own. It made them feel more powerful, but it made the humanity weaker.
Right, but we just established that we can't know the existence of the rest of the world. Therefore, why should the priest care?
I don't think we established that.
We established Nietzsche. You were talking about Nietzsche. He was talking like metaphysically. He saw the universe as chaos and something that can't be like really perceived or known. Therefore, all your views that he
Hang
is
on,
bringing.
I didn't say it can't be perceived. What I said is you
Well,
can't find the truth that that explains it.
mm,
Uh,
So
it actually can be perceived. He believes that it can be perceived much
okay.
more than Kant, for instance, believed it. Yeah, because Kant believed that we can't know the thing itself, and for Nietzsche there is no thing as a thing itself. We are what we feel. What reality around us is reality.
Mhm.
He basically, one of the things it did is get rid of the idea of because look,
Yeah.
the idea of when you create the idea of like Plato or Christianity, the idea of the real world, which is not our world, but for Plato is the ideals, yeah, which our world is just a pale limitation of, yeah. So we live in, according to Plato, and then according to most of Western thinking, we live in a false world because there is a real world which we fell from, basically. Um, and since Nietzsche gets rid of that real world, that means that our reality is not a false world anymore. It is the world. It is the real world.
Yeah. Well, we have formed it into the real world.
I think we understand this point that there's no noumenon, if you want, in Nietzsche. The point we are asking is if there is no noumenon and there is only the will to power and to impose upon the chaos, how can it be said that the priests and the others brought humanity as a collective to the wrong direction, basically, because
Yeah.
it appears that they are doing the same thing as Nietzsche is saying, basically, and they are overcoming the pain basically in the same way. It seems there is a distinction between acceptance and overcoming. But when we go and look at what do, which is which is basically reframing the suffering in a way that makes it worth it in Nietzsche's vision. So then it appears that the guy who is sick and prays, and God grants in his idea, grants him healing in his perception. In its perception, has overcome the pain exactly in the same way as Nietzsche has overcome the pain of his sickness.
Because
Yeah.
in slave morality, you are suppressing other people, and
Okay, but Nietzsche himself, admittedly, these were things that he went unpublished, but he himself talked about forcing the others, admittedly, to accept themselves. So you might say that that's
yes,
not really
yeah,
suppressing.
and that's I made that criticism of him. I mean, he basically, I think he basically kind of betrayed himself with that, because yeah, it just went too far, and kind of left his basic intuition and moved further from it into a point that I think.
Well,
Yeah.
let me give the specific practical example because I don't think I phrased it in the best way possible. Nietzsche, of course, is like very does not like priests. I think we get that, but he also praises the Russians as a people, saying that they have this brave, unrebellious fatalism, where essentially they just push through adversity accept/overcome it. I guess you could say, comparing, let's say, the average Russian, who at that time, of course, was a servant of the Tsar, what is the distinction between the average Russian and the average priest? How is the average Russian overcoming versus the average priest just accepting?
Again, I don't think the priest is accepting. I think the priest is overcoming as well.
Okay.
The problem is that
And
the
sorry.
morality, and by the way, it is not really blaming. It's not so much the priest that he's blaming. He's blaming them for creating the basic
Okay.
idea of slave morality, but
Okay.
the which is
He's blaming the guy that will listen
is
to
a
the
negation of
this.
is basically saying that the great people are bad people, yeah, because those who are unique, those who are greater than us, it's basically the herd, those who are harming the herd are bad people, and we need to suppress them. That's the idea of slave morality, yeah. So
Yes, he's blaming the earth.
and so now, as long as it started with the Jews, but when they were enslaved by Rome. But the Jews, it was just in their mind, yeah. So it really wasn't really that harmful, as long as it was just in their own mind that they are superior to the Romans because they have this morality. So it gave them a sense of superiority and helped them overcome, but it wasn't really harmful to anyone. But then, Christianity came and told people that if they adopt slave morality, they will inherit the afterlife. They will inherit heaven, and with that, basically, took over the world eventually, and then slave morality took over, and basically suppressed all the great people. But even that, but he still says though that, and that's in the genealogy of morals, that
Yes.
Christianity also had, a strong sense of individualism. Everybody is an individual soul, and
Yes.
so there was a balance. There was a
Yes.
balance between the two. So Christianity is not really. He's blaming Christianity for creating slave morality, and yeah, he can, if you read Antichrist, he's really condemning Christianity, but
he's also praising it for
yeah,
essentially
but
putting
praising for that,
shackles on it as well.
yeah, creating counter forces like individualism, yeah. But his real problem is in the 19th century we overthrew God, we overthrew Christianity, but we still hold on to slave morality.
Yes.
And then it creates collectivist ideas like socialism and utilitarianism, and this is those are the real things that he's against, yeah, because he says this is slave morality without the individualism to balance it. And this is
the point is that he is blaming the head for listening to the priest, basically.
Yeah, the
Okay.
herd. The idea. It's not so much about blaming. It's it's ideas. Ideas were born in a way, and then they can spread. A good idea can become harmful at some point. Yeah, this is what genealogy is. Ideas just kind of transform and become. Ideas that were right for the time, and then become bad over the years. And yeah, so this idea of the slave morality just took over, and now in 19th century, it creates this. And look, he was predicting terrible things for the 20th century.
Yes.
That will come from
That
will come from collectivism, and yeah, we got the totalitarian regimes. Yeah, and this is what he was talking about.
Well, I think we all agree.
Yeah, I guess. I guess from my perspective, morality, no matter how you look at it, morality is always going to be focused on, and society is always going to be built upon the idea of the collective. So, from my perspective, I actually agree a lot with Nietzsche that there should be that emphasis on the individual, and I actually find him quite freeing in some of those earlier passages. But at the same time, it seems almost nonsensical to even dream up a morality that is not in some way more balanced or more pushed towards the collective than the
Okay,
individual.
so look, what he says, and that goes beginning with the gay science and all the way to the will to power, is even though in the will to power you have other ideas, but still you have that idea that there are two spheres that society should have. There's the sphere of the herd, which should maintain these values of basically say moral of collectivism and all that, but that society should also allow a sphere for what he calls the free spirits, the people who are capable of creating their own values, and they will make experiments of spirit, and they will provide the balance. And in my video, my Nietzschean liberalism, I discuss John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, and I said that he basically says the same thing. He says that also that we should allow certain people we must allow those great people freedom to experiment, to create new values, to try it out. This is both Mill and Nietzsche say it. We are now strong enough. Society is robust enough to allow this. Nietzsche says that in the past, in the times of the warriors, could harm the herd. The herd wasn't strong enough. Now the herd is very strong. So we can set them free. We can set those people free. He even says that maybe it was necessary to suppress them for a while until the herd becomes this strong. But now we should set them free, and this will create a balance, and they will create the new ideas, which some of them will be adopted by the herd, and this is how society progresses, and Nietzsche sees the Superman at the end of the way. I tend to agree with Mill, which you don't see anything at the end of the way. It's just this is how society remains vital and viable, and when you have the two things, when you have a strong morality that is more about the collective, about society, about what is good. He was a utilitarian, Mill, yeah. So about what is good for the collective, but you also allow individuals who are special to operate and to create their own values and to basically create new ideas and this how.
So thoughts earlier before Zarathustra got a cold, you said that you had some points to make, and you started making an interesting point about theology. Could you continue from there?
Okay, right. So basically, what I wanted to say is the Nietzsche is. We have gone to a completely different subject now, but Nietzsche, it appears that he's framing his metaphysics in a theological way, similar to what some ideologies were also doing at the time, because he seems to recognize, and you say that as much, that with the so-called overthrow of God, the balance between the collectivism and individualism was lost, which was I think it was a point of Christianity, though I don't particularly see Christianity as the Christian or the Christendom as suppressing free spirits at this point, because we have people such as Meister Eckhart inside of the canon of Christianity, and we have got people like Occam inside the same canon. But anyway, yes, I would agree with him that the so-called overture of God centered everything upon collectivism, and this has caused the century. This has caused the 20th century as we know it. With I don't think the 20th century needs any more reprobation that it has already got. Let us say. But on the metaphysical side, this all comes down to an attempt from those ideologies to basically building the kingdom of God on earth, or as Blake would have said at the time, to build Jerusalem on England's green hills. Blake at the time was still a Christian, but had still had already physicalized the ideal of a kingdom of heaven as something that was to be built by us. I think.
As was Jerusalem builded here upon those dark satanic mills.
Yeah. That again, great poet Blake, but I don't know. You know.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that Nietzsche is trying to avoid doing the same thing, but through he ends up doing the same thing. That is, more or less. He tries to. He has removed everything, and that was a good starting point because because everything was muddled. So I can praise the attempt of beginning anew by starting with the world is chaos, and we have to impose order on it. But then he does the same. He seems to be doing the same thing up to the introduction, up to the defeat of the Superman, because he's trying to reframe again. Because he's trying to do the same thing. He's trying to reframe the pain that existed before as something that has a meaning. Which is interesting when we talk about the Book of Job, in which it is one of the possibilities that are presented to Job to answer to his suffering, but is ultimately rejected.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know 100% if this is where the old order was going. And
Well, look,
mhm.
I mean, Nietzsche was part of the modern age,
Yeah.
and the modern grand narrative, what we call today, was creating heaven on earth.
Okay.
Was the idea of perfecting man,
Yeah.
and reaching basically a utopian society, and the Superman is definitely totally in that tradition.
Okay.
The collapse of the Superman is already leads us. Okay, first of all, no, there is a difference because it was all everything everything that came before Nietzsche. It was about man perfecting man.
Mhm.
And man will create a world of utopia, a utopian world for himself. Nietzsche was the first to say we have to think beyond man.
Okay.
Man is too polluted. The idea of man is too polluted. Man cannot be perfected. We have to think beyond man. So. And by the way, this is some I intend to in a future video talk about it. That
Mhm.
I've noticed at some point that I can relate to everything that came after, not everything, but to things that came after Nietzsche. In pop culture and things in culture, and but nothing that came before Nietzsche. And I realized that this it's because of this. Nietzsche was the first to talk about the death of man, and the death of the idea of man. And you see that right after Nietzsche, in pop culture, you already start to get creatures that are intelligent but are not human, not man. Vampires, aliens, it's all mutations, all those things. That everything, superheroes, everything, everything immediately after Nietzsche. Some of it is affected by him, but not all of it. He was just the first to kind of articulate this sensibility that people just got tired of the idea of man. So Superman. So he said, if you want to reach that utopia, so he was still thinking in the modern terms of reaching a utopia. But he said, so this was the first change. Yeah, we need to think. We need to overcome man. I mean, this is the self surpassing of man. Is the Superman the self surpassing of man? Yeah, man is surpassing himself, creating the ideals that will surpass himself, and create a new being that is a Superman. But that's still a utopian thing, and that also collapses. And with that, he basically heralds the end of the modern age. So with this idea that with the idea of the eternal return, the idea that utopia is to be achieved in moments within life, in perfect moments within life, that's already taking us out of that paradigm, out of the modern paradigm.
Okay. So we agree this is the modern paradigm of perfecting yourself.
And I also agree that the modern paradigm was basically came out of Christianity. Basically, it was a rebellion against the idea of heaven in the afterlife, but still maintained the idea of heaven.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will we agree then that the medieval conception is not a modern conception? That in the medieval world you are not trying to perfect man because it's impossible, and Nietzsche is agreeing with this.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. All right.
Yeah.
It's just that I think if we are all on the same page with this, I think it's productive, because then we can talk about whether Nietzsche is going in a direction which is at that point productive or not, because if we have discarded the idea of perfecting man and society, then we still need metaphysical assumption to go on, and Nietzsche founds them on individualism, and I would argue that medieval Christianity founded them on a balance between individualism and collectivism. Would you agree with this?
I don't know. I mean, this is a bit vague.
Yes, but
Nietzsche basically provides us. That it leads to existentialism. It leads to creating your own value and living as an individualist. This is the.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then, why should my individual values not being the individual values of the church? I mean, at this point, we have argued before that he's blaming the earth for following the priest. We got back to that. You say he's not blaming people. Okay, you're saying he's not blaming people, and I can see why you say that. But still, we agreed that there are people who will follow the will to power of someone else, and there are people who will be free spirits, basically. Is this more is the Nietzschean ideal more conducive or this or the medieval idea?
Well, look, if we talk about, let's say, my Nietzschean liberalism, yeah, I believe that my liberalism, yeah, my idea. So I'm a pluralist, and I believe that you just follow your intuitions. And if Christianity is the thing that brings you joy, then you should be a Christian. Yeah, so this is my and this is why, I believe, since I'm pluralist, I also believe in maintaining a democracy, a liberal democracy, where everyone can have their own is free to pursue their own happiness. And so this is my idea. Yeah, Nietzsche is has this aversion to slave morality, and yeah, he blames Christianity for slave morality, and not so much for. He's not. He doesn't blame Christianity for the idea of God, for instance, or which he's an atheist, but it's not so much. He kind of sees it as a moot point, he sees the idea of God as dead, and so it's not that he's not against the belief in God, and he's not against the faith and all that. He just sees it as dead, as something that is about to disappear. And
we are still dead, though.
So the problem he has with the Christianity is the morality. That's the problem. The slave morality. The idea of so I mean. And again, that he's not fighting against Christians of his time. You don't see him really criticizing Christians of his time. In his time, he's fighting, like I said, socialism and utilitarianism and those ideas that developed out of slave morality. He sees this as,
Christianity.
The discussion of Christianity is just to basically say where the genealogy of morals, where these morals that we have today came from, and he blames Judaism and Christianity for that. But his problem is not with Judaism and Christianity. His problem is these concurrent problems, the acute problems that he has is with the political movements around him that he sees as or even just the morality of the time, Victorian morality. He sees it all as slave morality and harmful.
The argument is still that thinkers before him, such as Plato and St. Paul at this point, and so on and so forth, brought humanity in the wrong direction, though. How it defines wrong direction?
Again, the wrong direction. It's not that he's he's not like he's canceling past thinkers. He has criticism of everyone. He has good things to say about everyone. He has bad things to say about everyone. And where he says bad things is where he believes that they lead people towards several ideas. The idea of the pure spirit is bad for him, because the idea that we are spirit and not part of the earth. That disconnects us from ourselves. For him, that's one idea that is bad, and he blamed mainly Plato for it, but of course many philosophers after him. The idea, again, slave morality, the idea that basically that morality is about suppressing anything that is harmful for the herd. What else does he have a problem with? The idea of the world of truth. it is not our world. Okay, so these are the ideas, and you know, heaven. The idea of the heaven in the afterlife is just that. It's just for him, it's just evolved from the idea of the world of truth. And so yes, so problems like this is where he has criticism, because he says he wants to reconnect us to the earth, to ourselves. So.
Okay. But wants to do that for what? To achieve the means to overcome and reframe what happens to you, as we said earlier, no?
Yeah, I mean, it's about happiness. It's about
It's about
how to become,
happiness. Okay.
how to become happier, and how to become happier by basically reconnecting to your instincts, which no longer suppressing them, setting them free, but of course, learning how to construct them, to turn them into channel them in constructive directions by creating worldviews that, like for instance, we talked about before about how he defeated death, with the idea of the eternal return. Now, this is one thing that the instinct that is freed here with that is the will to live. A very strong instinct, which Schopenhauer, which came right before him, Schopenhauer said that we need to suppress this instinct. We need to suppress our will to live. He said is the thing that causes us the greatest pain, greatest suffering, because we know that we are going to die, and so we need to basically, according to Schopenhauer, we need to overcome, to negate our will to live, and reach basically nirvana. He was very affected by Buddhism. You can get to a nirvana where we don't, basically we come to a point where we kind of don't exist. We don't have an ego.
More or less at the time, the Devanta and other Indian texts were being translated into German, French, and English. That may have something to do with that influence.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with everything, but still I think we have some problem of communication. My point here is if everything that we have said before, it is a mean to reach joy and reach a mean of overcoming, and the guy, I mean literally the pleb, all right, that plays the rosary every day, reaches the means of overcoming and reaches joy in the same way as Nietzsche, then Nietzsche has no ground to say, by his own definition and having put his own metaphysical assumption in place, he has no ground to say that he was led astray in some way, because he has reached the same objective and the same going beyond.
Okay, but then he kind of adopts Nietzsche's worldview, doesn't he? He adopts at least the ethics of self-surpassing. I mean, again, the idea, the problem for Nietzsche is the idea of is your problem with like if a Christian reaches that, because again, Nietzsche would not have a problem with that. It's his problem with those certain ideas of
that's the only issue, basically, because he seems to be arguing for some things when talking about like historically, like when he says that Christianity has deprived us of the harvest of pagan and Islamic civilization and so on and so forth, and he seems then to be arguing for the opposite now. You know what I mean?
The opposite of what? The opposite of what?
Is trying to argue on one side that the whole structure was repressive, but is also arguing that if people can reach the same overcoming as him with other means, then he's arguing that it really wasn't repressive.
Uh, Repressive. I mean,
We can't do we can't say good or bad because we have cut that branch before. But I'm trying to argue by accepting everything Nietzsche has said and everything we are talking about until now. If we do that, we still reach a point in which is still sneering at Christianity, but saying that it's alright. It's a bit of an issue, I think.
again, first of all, Nietzsche is arguing. He believes that God is dead. Yeah, so that's
I don't agree, but I accepted
yeah.
it for the sake of argument.
No, he basically thinks that Christianity is about to die. It's not that he wishes it. Yeah, he just thinks that this is the reality. That we can no longer believe in God. He was wrong about that. Yeah, he was wrong about that. But this is what he believed. But this is what he believed. Yeah, he basically believed that not only him. Yeah, a lot of people believed that back then.
Sure.
So he's basically arguing in a world without God. How do what is where do we go from here?
The great line: "How must we, the murderers of all murderers, like contend with our crime?"
Yeah, we've already heard of it.
You were waiting for saying that.
Yeah, so Zarathustra, in your book, I remember you said that you thought that if Nietzsche had retained his sanity, and his life, then he would have. Then this idea of the eternal return, that it would, and the will to power might not have been his final.
I mean, if he remained true to himself, he would continue to self-surpass and create a new idea. Yeah. So we don't know. Yeah, but I mean, it's just I don't know where he could have gone from there. But yeah, and yeah. So sometimes people. David Bowie died in 2016, and I thought amazing. He died just at the right moment where his ideas were no longer kind of just before Trump. This whole he was part of a certain epoch, Bowie, and just he just snuffed just as it ended, and again knew exactly when to go, as always. Always had perfect timing, and maybe Nietzsche, same thing. Really didn't have anything more to. Although he was working on this big book that was supposed to be the transvaluation of all values, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
By his own definitions, he would have to have overcome that book too in the end.
Yes, yeah, and if I have to put a theory of why he collapsed at that moment, he just wrote a book before that called Ecce Homo, which was basically a autobiography, and he's very content with what he achieved, up to that point. And he said basically to clear the table before he starts writing this big book. So he basically sums up his life up to this point, his work. He's very, very content. He's very happy with what he achieved. And maybe that moment of of contentment. At that moment, he stopped fighting. At that for 1 moment, and that's when the virus got him. So this is kind of my
It's a
Nietzschean
bit on the
theory.
realm of psychology.
It's a bit
Yeah,
like
this
it's a bit like the ending of Ashira no Jo, if you have watched that, I guess.
Yeah.
So, do you think? I mean, do you think that I can hear some echo somehow. Somebody. I think it's you, Zarathustra. Have you disconnected your headset because I can hear some echo?
Okay, just a minute. Maybe it's.
Yeah. So. Are you back? Yeah, I don't hear any echo now. I think it's fixed. About the eternal return. By the way, can you hear me, Zarathustra? Hello. Can anybody hear me?
I can.
Zarathustra. We can't hear you. Try.
Hello?
He's not speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
So about the if you remember, I mean, about the eternal return. One of the interpreters, I think it was Kaufman or something. I think he said, you said that he said that like you're not supposed to take the eternal return literally. That it's literally true. Is that right?
I don't remember. I think. Look, Nietzsche is trying to couch his ethics, his morality, in a metaphysics.
Okay.
And again, this metaphysics is a creation. He's not claiming that he discovered the truth about the world, because you can't discover the truth about the world. He's creating a metaphysics that will support the ethics, and in that metaphysics, yeah. So, but again, he gives an explanation to it. Yeah, if the explanation is that if the will to power is all that is, and the will to power can only act according to its own nature, it means that every moment will follow every situation can create the next moment in only one way, because the will to power can only act in one way according to its so basically it's deterministic basically. But since time is eternal, and there is and will to power is finite. There's a certain amount of will to power. It's not eternal. It's not infinite. Then the order of things that are right now, will, again, in a deterministic way, will go on until it inevitably, since time is eternal, will have to come back to the same order of things, and then continue with the same in the same way. So basically, yeah, it's an eternal return. It's just an endless circle in which everything follows, and we live the same life again and again, with nothing ever changes.
There seems to be some assumptions in here, though.
Yeah. Again,
I mean,
it's
means that the will to power is deterministic, always defines always behaves in the same way. But it's the will of to power. Why can't it behave in other ways? For instance, then he assumes that the will of power to power is finite. That I don't know how you can know that. And then he assumes that the universe is infinite, while the will of
time is
power
infinite.
is finite, which again,
No, not the
we
universe.
don't know
Time is
exactly the
infinite. Yeah.
boundaries of the universe, but it may well be finite itself. So it is sounds like there's some assumptions in here.
Yeah. Again, he's not trying to. He's not trying to. He's not claiming to have discovered the truth. He's creating a metaphysics.
Okay. But say if you are not attempting to discover the truth, why are you bothering with a metaphysics?
As we said, why? Because this is how you put order, put your own will on the world, and put order in the chaos, and this is how you achieve happiness. This is how you achieve power, and from that you achieve happiness.
Okay, would you say that you have to agree to believe in the order that you put into the universe for it to be useful to you?
Yes, you believe in it because it's it corresponds to your instincts, and it corresponds to the facts of reality. So yeah, you basically, even though you know it's a creation, it's it's just your this is it's very when you reach that point where you kind of create it, and you kind of figure out this worldview, you feel like you again, this is the most powerful joy that there is, when you suddenly manage to put it all together in a way that works. You feel like you've overcame and just managed to. It feels like a discovery. Yeah, it feels like. Now, of course, he will claim that every thinker that believed that they discovered the truth about the universe, this is what that happened. Yeah, they imposed their own will on the universe, and they believed that they discovered the truth. They just, what they imposed on the universe, they saw as the truth that the universe revealed to them. And we know that thinkers of the past, when they talked about these moments, and mystics as well, they talked about it in as the most joyful thing that
Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, so this is why
I think it just comes down to the fact that I don't agree with Nietzsche's personal intuitions. Then,
yes,
so,
yeah, it's I once made a video defending Jordan Peterson when he said that he says something about he doesn't believe in God, but he acts like he exists, or something like that. He said that he acts like the Christianity, the rules of Christianity are true, even though he doesn't know it. He doesn't believe in it. And this is the same thing. I said you have to. Otherwise, you are, if you don't believe in anything, then you are stuck. Yeah, you can't operate. You can't do anything. So you have to believe in something. You have to create. You have to believe in metaphysics. It has to be metaphysics to give order into your life. Yeah.
I see. So it's basically just like having faith, I guess.
It is about having faith, but the faith has to be based on your own intuitions.
okay.
And not on because you were told that this is how it is.
Absolutely agree. I based my faith on both reasoning and intuition. To be honest,
Zarathustra, this is kind of off topic, but what did you think of that article me and Fox wrote about pop
that was
culture?
fun to write. Man. That was
Yeah.
fun to write.
The one we wrote about pop culture against, I guess,
That's a whole different discussion, isn't it?
I was playing like a Victorian gentleman, and I had the time of my life.
um,
Yeah.
so would you put would you say that there's some kind of a division between the pop culture stuff and the philosophy stuff for you, I guess?
Um. Well, no, it's all part of the same project because, okay, when it comes to Nietzsche, let's say, okay, Nietzsche was kind of an elitist, but
Yeah, that's another
not
statement.
I hadn't.
not so much a pop, but pop culture of the 20th century. I mean, the music is very Dionysian, and so there's a lot of Nietzschean stuff in it. But I mean, as a philosopher, I there's this idea of philosophy of Plato puts forward by Plato that you have to show people out of the cave. Yeah, they live in the cave of lies, not lies, but no, what's the word? Uh, no.
I can't remember either. What came?
Yeah, that's the presentation basically. When you just what's the word? And basically you lead them to the light of truth, and as we know, very few can believe in that anymore. That we can figure out the truth. So in the 20th century, Wittgenstein. Ludwig Wittgenstein said that the role of the philosopher is to show the fly out of the bottle, the way out of the bottle. Now the difference here is it's kind of the same thing, yeah. But the difference is that the fly doesn't always live in the bottle; it just gets stuck into it. So yeah. So as a philosopher, basically. Wittgenstein's idea is that life is, life is how it should be, and the philosopher needs to help us keep on living the good life that we are living, and sometimes when our thought gets into a bottle, which I think is what happened to liberal thought, and this is how I treat the whole woke stuff. It's basically liberal thinking, getting itself into a bottle. Well, it's kind of trapped in stupidity, and I'm trying to show it the way out. But the other idea here is that the philosopher does not discover any. There is no world of truth, yeah, which is what Plato is talking about. So you don't. The philosopher doesn't deal with any ideals. There's no other world which we are trying to reach with our thought, which is what Plato and many philosophers are trying to do. What we are doing is looking at life, looking at the world, and trying to make sense of it.
Isn't that the same statement, though? I mean, in a way, you. I guess you could say trying to make sense of it is just lower level of resolution, just saying we know enough to make sense, like we don't have to know what's actually reality. I guess that is sort of distinct, but it is getting at the same idea.
No, it's not that we don't know what's actually reality. It's that we don't really know what the let's say the laws that govern the universe, but but we can find insights about life, and this is what a philosopher should be doing. They should look at the world as it is, and try to make and this is what I do. Yeah, so this is why I look at pop culture, at the things that people are into. And yeah, you will not see me. You will rarely see me using philosophical language. I use everyday language even in my writings, even in the book on Nietzsche. I try to stay away as much as possible from philosophical language, because it takes us out. It kind of implies that there is another world of, a pure world of ideas. No, the world is, I work within the world, and to work within the world is to work in pop culture. So this is and it's Nietzschean in the sense that I'm trying to figure out basically the music is Dionysian. The pop music is Dionysian, from jazz and rock and roll and everything. It's ecstatic, and my exploration of it, are trying to explain where this ecstasy comes from and how we can recreate it. And this is Nietzschean. This is and I am relying on Nietzsche in many ways, or at least not relying on him so much as what's the word? Yeah, exchanging, using him to relating to him, kind of, and corresponding with him. Yeah, that's the word. And corresponding with his ideas. So these are the I have this series on YouTube that I call Existentialism in the Pop Age, which is I'm taking the ideas of existentialism, of how to exist, and applying them to to our time, to the pop age, what they call the pop age, and yes, so you have to explore pop culture for that. So it's all connected for me.
So I mean, you mentioned how you said that you think that music is Dionysian. In the book, I remember you said that the meaning of the word Dionysian, for Nietzsche at least, changed over time.
Yeah.
So, which meaning are you using when you're talking about the music? Nietzsche's earlier meaning or his later meaning of Dionysian?
Both, because so earlier on it's about chaos and the ecstasy that comes with chaos when you because we're talking about his first book, which is The Birth of Tragedy, out of music, and he says that the tragedy was born out of, and it's just it's historical. It was born out of the canals, out of these orgies that were part of the celebration of Dionysus, the god of wine, in which people would just lose, go get drunk and lose all inhibitions. And basically that's chaos, but it's chaos that connects you to the earth, and this is and he says that the tragedy put that on stage and showed you moments of breakdown. The Dionysian is the moments when the order breaks, the order of society, basically the order of the prevailing order breaks down, and you realize that it is not based on truth, but basically that reality is chaotic, and to balance that, he says the tragedies have what he calls the Apollonian. aspect, which is imposing beauty. After you've exposed that reality is chaotic and violent and all that, there is ecstasy in that, but it's also very frightening because you can't live with this idea that the world is chaotic. You must, so people are afraid of that, even though it's so after you experience that, you feel catharsis because it is the ecstasy is joyful, that where everything just collapses and falls down and everything. But then the tragedy imposes the order back again and imposes a beauty, a veil of beauty, which is what he calls the Apollonian, because Apollo is kind of the god of beauty and so kind of an order. The order is restored, and at the end, so this is how you can. Tragedy is basically a way for that in Nietzsche's interpretation. This is how the Greeks dealt with the realization that reality is chaos. That you show order, you show it breaking down, but then you show order being reestablished, and there is joy in that. That's why tragedy is powerful. Now, of course, he blames then the what's his name, Euripides, the great tragedian, the great playwright. That basically he changed that, and basically he changed tragedy into something rational. It was no longer about showing the irrationality of the chaotic irrationality of reality, but trying to show that it has rationality, that the order is actually based on rationality. Never mind that. Okay, so this is the Dionysian at first. It later changes into basically the Dionysian becomes this ecstasy you feel when you go through self-surpassing. So you are basically imposing a new order. So it's kind of now contains the Apollonian, because you are imposing a new order. But when you impose a new order, the former order disintegrates, and you feel ecstasy, and you feel joy, you feel connected into the world, and the greatest joy. Yeah. So this is the Dionysian. So this ecstasy of self-surpassing, of creating yourself anew, imposing a new order. And in music, in pop, certainly in the pop music of the 20th century, it's ecstatic, and every once in a while, someone comes and creates a new form of music, which it basically comes from a new worldview. If you follow my series on psychedelia, you see that there is the music comes out of certain ideas about the world, and it's true for every pop genre, or many of them at least. So every once in a while, there's this moment where someone came and imposed a new order, a new musical order, which was a great ecstasy for that moment and all that. So yeah, so both. We are out of that period, by the way. There's no more. It's been a long time since anyone offered a new form of ecstatic experience.
So, in the book, you mentioned that Nietzsche had a critical period, or a critical age, where he basically rejected other people's ideas without having an idea of his own to replace them. Did you ever have a similar period as well, or not?
I would say when I was, a teenager, and you go through this nihilistic phase.
Do you?
Then I,
Yeah.
hmm?
No, no. Go.
Yeah, then I actually, like I said, through music, through starting to thinking about music and realizing that it brings me joy. Starting to try to understand, okay, why am I feeling joy? And then I realized that David Bowie is kind of asking the same questions about rock and roll. And I also went. That's when I went to study philosophy in my early 20s, and I came upon Nietzsche, and I realized that he too is kind of. It took me time until I realized it, but because again, uh, those who taught me Nietzsche taught me, I think, wrong. But but
Well,
out of reading it
perhaps
myself. So yeah.
perhaps you could go into that. How do you feel that you were taught Nietzsche wrong, and what do you think are maybe some common misconceptions about him?
I mean, there are numerous misconceptions. I mean, everybody
Okay,
look.
pick one. Pick one.
Everybody that writes a book on Nietzsche, and every book that I've read on Nietzsche, like first 5 pages, I say, yeah, okay, yes, 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 and then they present some sort of idea, which it's basically their own idea, and they twist Nietzsche's, so they kind of take a fragment out of something that Nietzsche says to kind of, kind of support it, to kind of affirm it, and then they start developing this idea into their own interpretation, into their own worldview, by quoting very little Nietzsche,
Mm.
and take it very further and further away from anything that resembles what Nietzsche says. If you notice my videos on Nietzsche and my book, I am very, very close to the text all the time. Yeah, I always bring long passages of text. Now, if you read, let's say, Heidegger on Nietzsche, he wrote a book which is more than 1,000 pages long, which to me is just, just a pile of just nonsense, and just you see that so few quotes of Nietzsche in 1,000 pages, almost nothing. He never quotes an entire passage. He just takes lines, and basically he turns Nietzsche into Heidegger. Yeah. Now, okay, common misconceptions. The idea of the Superman, as like I said, the Superman is in Nietzsche's thought appears only in Das Spake Zarathustra. Mentioned about, I think, 4 times later on in Will to Power.
I did note in this was a minor quote, but in genealogy he mentions Napoleon as being a synthesis of both Unternehmen and Übermenschen.
Yeah, I
Like
don't know.
essentially a synthesis of underman and overman.
Mm.
Which I thought was an interesting way of putting it. One I'd agree with, but
Yeah, it was. So people first of all are mistaken about what it means, the Superman.
Mhm.
I think it's because Nietzsche talks about great people, like Napoleon and Cesare Borgia, and they think that this is what he means by the Superman. No, he's talking about, like I said, no one has ever been the Superman, and no one living in our time can be the Superman. So Superman is a utopian project at the end of time, which we all have to, by self-surpassing of everything that man is now, and reaching that. So, and again, and so first of all, they misunderstand the concept, the idea of the Superman, and also the belief that the Superman is Nietzsche's main main target, which which is wrong. Like I said, it's just Zarathustra, and it falls. It's it's an idea that Zarathustra presents at the beginning of the book, which a failed idea, an idea that he has to surpass. So yeah, that's one. That's one. What else?
By the way, given that you're on this topic, there was one section of the book that I didn't get. That was the one about Deleuze or Deleuze. I don't know how you say his
Yeah,
name.
Deleuze. Yeah.
Into Deleuze.
What was wrong with his interpretation? I kind of I didn't get what his interpretation was at all.
What was right with it? Really, I mean, it's a postmodern interpretation, completely made out, pulled out of his ass. I mean,
but perhaps you could just explain, like, directly what he says and why you think it's nonsense.
I don't really remember. Look,
That's fair.
he's
the feeling of
I bought him because he's the only one. He's the only one who tried to claim that Nietzsche has a metaphysics. And as I recall, he says that there are forces that are, I puts it, forces that are active and forces that are reactive. And just he creates a completely which has nothing to do with Nietzsche, and again, by taking one quote, one line from Nietzsche, misinterpreting it, taking it out of context, and building an entire metaphysics on it. It's really and I think I admit there that I don't understand fully what he wants to say, because I think he's just yeah. I think he's just bullshitting. But yeah, it's just.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I don't think he understands what he wants to say.
Okay, it's that bad. Yeah. So yeah, I think
he rejects the idea of understanding.
I see.
Like ideologically, he rejects the idea of understanding things, and then he decides to write, but with no real reason, because we can't understand or obtain anything from writing. So, okay, it's like Fidelist art, more or less.
Yeah, I guess it's from what I got. I don't know if I mentioned this in the review, but from what I got, I've also heard this said of some Marxist writers who basically write interpretations of Marx where they basically say what Marx actually meant is something totally different from what Marx said, but it's actually what they want to say, I guess.
Yeah. And look, there is a sense in which it is legitimate to do so. If you say, for instance, that okay, if Marx lived today, he would have realized that this and this ideas of his were wrong, because of what we learn in the meantime. But we can still keep a few other insights. So let's see what happens if we keep only these insights and reject. So this is a way in which you can still say that this is Marxist, yeah. But there's a lot of just free interpretation going on.
Though, because they still cling to things like the rate of interest naturally falling in capitalism and stuff like that. So it's how the youngsters say today. It's cope, sit,
Yeah.
move. This kind of thing.
So I think I try to summarize what you said in the book about
Yeah.
free will in the free will. I guess Nietzsche's view of free will, and I think I said something like Nietzsche thinks that you don't. I mean, you basically are will. So, but I think it would be better if you explain it in your own words, Zarathustra.
Okay. Free will is the freedom of will is a very hard. It's to me it's the hardest philosophical concept. Whenever you think about it, you get into you just come up with unsatisfactory answers. So the idea is that we are made of will to power, and will to power. I mean, okay. Even before that, Nietzsche rejected the idea of free will, and he said that we don't think our thoughts. Our thoughts come. It's all on the unconscious level, formed on the unconscious level, and we just see it at the end. It comes to us to our consciousness in its end form, which first of all, it kind of the whole idea of the unconscious is just. I mean, he was one of the people who kind of created it, yeah, of the idea of that we have an unconscious world. This is before Freud, and but also, if you listen to, let's say, Sam Harris talk about free will, and he's he's interesting to me because he's a neuroscientist, is he? Anyway, he knows about the experiments done on the brain, and which have showed that we basically decide things before we realize we decide them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is basically corresponds to Nietzsche's idea. But then okay, so he creates this idea that we are made of will to power, and will to power is the only thing that is, and it can only act according to its own nature, so it can only act in one way. So it's not. So it can't go both ways. Yeah, there's no. You will always react. You act in the way that you are supposed to react in every. And actually, it's not a reaction so much because it's will to power is creating. So you basically in every moment you basically act. You're not reacting. You act on the world, but you act on the world in a way that the only way that you can at that moment because this is your nature. You can act only in one way. So it's kind of deterministic. So when we talk about determinism, we say okay. So there's no free will. But Nietzsche says, well, that's because we have this concept of again, this duality of spirit and of mind and matter and all that. That if we say that, okay, so everything happens in the brain before the mind gets it. So it's kind of happened on the material level. So basically, our spirit is a slave to the material world. Yeah. But if we reject this duality and everything is will to power. So okay, so we are thinking the will to power is free. It's acting according to its own nature. So it's not. So in that way, it is free. So it's acting only it's acting according to its nature. So it is free, but its nature, because its nature, it can only act in one way. So it's deterministic. Okay, so that's the and the thing is, okay, so the way I see it, if you think about it, I made a video about it where I said, yeah, Okay, so the thoughts come from the unconscious, but there's a thing called the train of thought, where you kind of, the conscious is kind of leading the thought for a few seconds maybe, but still, the thought is something that it's the consciousness that is leading it. So the consciousness is taking part in it, even if it's. So you can say that, yeah, you are taking part in your actions, and Nietzsche will say that your decisions are, all done on the unconscious level, but he also kind of implies that what you can change with self-surpassing, is your thought process, and once you change your thought process, your decisions will be different. So you have no control of your decision at this moment. But if you change your worldview, the decisions that you will take from now on will be different than what you've taken until now.
Yeah, that would still be deterministic, though. It would just be that if you expose yourself to this new way of thought, yeah, it will change your mind and views on things. But but either when you were exposed to it, you were either going to accept it or you weren't from the start.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's always deterministic.
Yes.
It's always the same. And look, I think I say it in the video. Basically, you say, yeah, but my thought at this moment is still determined by what happened the moment before. Yeah.
Mm.
But since we are in a circle, and what happened in the moment before is determined by your thought at this moment. So when you kind of think about it, time kind of goes away, and you basically just live in the now. And yeah, so this is the I didn't finish. Yeah, so if the one place where we see it very well is when he first introduces the idea of the eternal return in the gay science. I believe it's aphorism 341, just the one before last, where he says that once you accept this is where he presents the famous idea that a demon comes to you and tells you about the eternal return, tells you that you are going to live your life again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And he says most of us will find this thought terrible, but have you ever experienced this great hour in which, if a demon came to you at this moment, you would hug him and say, "This is the most amazing thing I ever heard. Thank you." Yeah. And what is the great hour? The great hour is the hour of self-surpassing, the moment of self-surpassing, where you feel the greatest joy. Yeah. If at that moment where you feel the greatest joy, the demon came to you and told you, you are going to live this moment again and again for eternity, you are going to say thank you. Yeah, you are going to say, yeah, I want. This is what I want. Now, and after that, the aphorism continues that once you internalize this idea, it will change you in a way that all your decisions will be to live a good life. So to live a happy and powerful life. So so this is why this idea of the eternal return is so crucial. If you internalize this idea, it will make you take decisions. Yeah, guys, it will change you in a way that will make you take decisions that will be good for you. That will be, will be healthy. You will be about living a good life, a healthy life, a happy life.
I guess one thing which I didn't get in the book is that Nietzsche that Nietzsche kind of rejects the idea that one moment follows the other somehow. Um, so it's
Then it cannot return. It's all in a circle. So I mean,
I see. So
It's not about but again, it's not that it's the moment. The moment now is not created by the previous moment. Rather, which is what if you believe in causality, this is what you believe. Rather, every moment, the universe recreates itself. So let's say the will to power is basically they're divided into bodies, many bodies of will to power, and they fill up the entire universe. There's nothing else. There's not even empty space. Um, and at every moment, and every body of will to power is always active, always trying to impose itself on its surroundings. And if it's more powerful than the body that's next to it, it's going to, in a way, swallow it. They're going to become one body. There are all sorts of. It's not that clear what's. He never developed it very much. That's in the will to power in the last book, which he didn't develop. But okay, so imagine that everybody is in the center, in the crossroad, of many bodies around it. Each one of them kind of tries to impose itself on each other, and they all the powers clash. And what determines the outcome is which power, the balance of powers. So it can only lead to one outcome, because the balance of powers is the balance of powers, and it can only lead to the certain. Yeah. So basically, if you think the universe at every moment is recreating itself. It's acting on itself always. It's always acting on itself, trying to impose. Everything is trying to impose itself around, and so the universe always creating itself again at every moment. So that's the idea. So it's not that. So the difference from like, let's say materialism. Let's say the atomistic, the classic atomistic idea of Democritus and Epicurus and not what's his name? Never mind. So the idea is that the bodies are not active. Bodies of matter are not active. They're acted upon. Yeah, dead matter. It's matter is not active. So it's forces that affect them, causes them to change, to move in a certain direction. In Nietzsche's universe, every body is a power, is active, is always acting on its surroundings. So the universe is not. It's not that one thing follows another. It's that it's always creating itself again and again and again.
Yeah,
it's metaphysics. It's metaphysics. Look,
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Another thing which you mentioned, I remember, is that Nietzsche was kind of trying to correct some kind of error in history, something to do with the mind, body, or rather body spirit divide. That earlier theories could not explain how consciousness could come into being, but Nietzsche's theory could explain it. So I guess
I think it explains better. The problem with okay, if you reject God, yeah, God is dead. So you can no longer say that our souls are born in heaven and enter the body and all that. So you have to say that, okay, so our souls come from earth, from earth, and they come from the body. And that's a problem for materialists. Because if you believe in dead matter, how does dead matter create consciousness and intelligence and
That's indeed a very, very good question.
yeah, and will, and all that. So that's a very big problem for materialism. Nietzsche's worldview explains it better. It's a better thing because you talk about forces that are active, that are so the way he explains it is that, like I said, bodies kind of get together and form a bigger body. And what he says is that this body, okay, so let's say this body, comes in contact with another body, and like we said, its action will be determined by the the way the bodies are organized within it and all that. So there's a certain action it will take. Now, if this action is good, so it basically it will, since it's an action, it's basically a reorganization, inside itself of the bodies kind of. If this action is good, the body will survive, which means that it will keep on having the same action, in the same situations. So you have this kind of. So this is basically how thinking develops. You have these patterns that are, survive, basically survive evolution. So even before organic bodies and everything, you have, let's say, a certain, it's made of atoms of will to power, and these atoms, this body reacts in a certain way, in which the atoms, kind of go in a certain way. It creates and it repeats this pattern again and again. Because this is how it is organized. So it's basically a thought pattern. It's a problem-solving thing, which, if it's good, it will survive, and then it comes part of a bigger body, and then the body becomes organic. And look, it's again, it's not developed. It's certain aphorisms which I kind of put together and try to figure out what Nietzsche is trying to say at this point. The whole idea of how life is brought about and how intelligence is brought about is not well developed. He never got around to it. I just tried to kind of from what we have.
Yeah, there were certain parts of genealogy when I was reading it where he was talking about, like, say, the origin of guilt, and you could tell, like, Nietzsche probably wouldn't have those ideas today, because, like, we observe animals more regularly and more easily, and we can see, like, guilt and whatnot manifesting in animals. It's not a necessarily human-only emotion.
Also, it appears that Nietzsche, in this attempt, is trying to be both reductionist and constructivist, in the sense that he seems to believe that consciousness can appear through a mechanism of arbitrary complexity or complex math. People like Fritjof Capra will say, when they say that it is an emergent property. It is the jury is still out on this one, but it will be a pretty modern idea. Yet it still suffers from the fact that it attempts at the same time reductionism and transcendence.
I don't get it.
Let's. You briefly mentioned Ayn Rand in your video on your Nietzschean liberalism, and you suggested that it might be good for objectivists to have a look at Nietzsche. And I think I must say I like the fact that you take the objectivists a bit seriously because nobody does, and I'm not sure whether that's exactly fair. Anyway,
Look, what I respect about Ayn Rand is that it should try to give a spiritual, grounding to capitalism, and I think that's a good thing to do. And I think that Nietzsche can help. If basically, I said you can take him in that direction if you want. The will to power. Where I said the difference, is that for Rand, since she's a philosopher of being, you cannot change yourself. You are who you are. So you're basically your will to power. Let's say she doesn't use these terms, but she something very similar is imposed on nature. Yeah, the heroes impose their will on nature and create things out of it, which then can become commodities, and this is which they trade, and this is capitalism for her. And for Nietzsche, since he's a philosopher of becoming, you mainly impose your will on yourself. It's about your self-surpassing. Yeah, so it's about shaping yourself, shaping and reshaping yourself. But the will to power can also, in Nietzsche's mind, can also be imposed on objects, on nature. So you can also be a Nietzschean capitalist. And yeah, but I think Nietzsche is kind of more spiritual than Rand, who is very materialist. So I think that the thing that I don't like about Ayn Rand and her followers is that they believe that she invented the wheel, and really she has a very she has a very simplistic worldview, and she didn't really invent anything, and kind of but yeah, I think basically I think basically they are liberals, and they do want to it is positive. By the way, Ebola, talks about Ebola in Ride the Tiger. He basically says to traditionalists, no, become part of liberal culture. Live in the liberal world, and I'm all for that. So and I think that's it's basically it's basically constructive. If you become this an individualist within the liberal world, you like Mill said, you help society, eventually you help the liberal society. So I'm all for any philosopher who is kind of directing in that direction. So the reason I brought her up in this video, because I was talking about liberalism, and she's a Nietzschean philosopher. So I thought it would be appropriate to mention her when I talk about liberalism and Nietzsche, and
the reason why I thought of her is that so basically you said that I remember even in the discussion that we had about Whitnell and I that the difference between you and us is that you are, I guess, a philosopher of becoming, where I guess we are of being, and you also said that Rand is a philosopher of being, but at the same time, and you also said that Nietzsche came up with his metaphysics, which are philosophy of out of philosophy of becoming, to justify his ethics. But at the same time, I guess when you're looking at the ethics, so the question is, can you have some kind of ethics which is like Nietzsche's, even if you are not, I guess, a philosopher of becoming, but rather a philosopher of being, like say Ayn Rand. I guess.
Yes, because Rand is very extreme in her, in her idea of being. It's A is A. Her characters never change. If you read her books, there are only two modes that you can have. You can either be true to yourself, or you can, act like society, be untrue to yourself and act like society wants you to act. Those are the two modes. There's never growth in her characters. There's never. But okay, but this is extreme. A lot of philosophers of being do believe in growth. They explain it in a certain way, that you have an essence that remains the same through the growth and through that. So you can achieve, growth and maybe self-surpassing. In a philosophy of being, the philosopher of being will just say that, okay, when you self-surpassed, something in it is still. This Nietzsche will of course agree with that there's a part of you that remains the same when you do the self-surpassing. He will just say that part can also be surpassed, yeah? Whereas a philosopher of being will say, no, there is a part of you that is your essence that can never be surpassed, can never be changed. But you can still have a philosophy of self-surpassing if you are a philosopher of being. Yeah.
I guess, but there will still be a core which doesn't change. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see. By the way, so given that you mentioned the idea that you reject the idea that A is A, and I guess what is the alternative to that? Something like what?
No. Again, I'm not rejecting the idea that A is A. It's just that I think that A is A at that same moment. But it can change.
Yes, it depends, doesn't it? For instance, two is two regardless of the moment.
Is it something like? Sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, go on.
So I think Elderfords was saying that with some things it doesn't change. Like 2 is 2. The number 2 is the number 2. But
okay. For something it doesn't change. Yeah.
I guess for things like.
By the way, Nietzsche.
Yeah.
So Nietzsche rejected even that. So he was really again. He said that this is all things that we impose on reality. Logic is something that evolved, and it evolved because it is useful, it is powerful. Logic is. It doesn't say that we should get rid of logic. Yeah, logic. We need logic, but he just rejects that it represents reality, and he says even the three basic laws of logic. That A is A, and that that not A is A is not A, and yeah. He rejects even that. So he says no. It's all we don't know. We don't know. This is our logic evolved, and we evolved to believe in A is A, and so we don't. We can't rely on that and say this is the truth of the universe.
Yeah, I don't know why, but for some reason, I think somewhere else you mentioned the idea of family resemblance. Yeah, and somehow for some reason I thought you had that in mind as an alternative to saying that A is A or something like that, but maybe I just misremembered.
No, that's no,
Something
not
else,
really. Yeah, no, family resemblance is about group identities, and it's about words, it's about language, it's about how our language presents reality. When you say, okay, like say the word tree, represents, we understand what tree says, but it represents a lot of many different things, many different trees. Yeah. And the fact that we can identify them all as a tree is that our logic kind of our consciousness kind of groups them together as part of the same family. Yeah. They have family resemblance, and this is why we group them together.
Use the number pi represent many things in this idea, because it is a universal constant for as much as we know. If things like universal constants don't count as universal constant, then we have problems in explaining why, for instance, if E or other constants are not universal, why the leaves on a tree grow according to a mathematical progression predictable through the Fibonacci progression and the golden ratio. So it appears that
Nietzsche doesn't Nietzsche doesn't talk about mathematics ever. So I can't tell you what he thought about it. Yeah. So
I know
the mathematics is the question of mathematics is philosophers have been racking their head about what is mathematics, because there was around that time, around Nietzsche's time, an attempt to say that mathematics comes out of logic, in which case it will Nietzsche would say again that so in that case it's evolved, but that failed. Yeah, I think it was Gödel
we will say more of the opposite now, that we have a perception of something that is somehow describable through mathematics, and through this perception we also have developed logic. If logic can be said to be developed.
The idea is kind of that mathematics is kind of a world of its own that is not dependent on man, on consciousness, or even on nature, or anything. It's just it's its own world.
We know that pi exists, or we don't get circles, not even imperfect circles in nature. So we are measuring something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So mathematics is different. And again, Nietzsche didn't talk about mathematics, so I don't know what he would say about it.
Right. I guess that is all. Unless I mean, there's another question, but it's not related to Nietzsche. So I think I'll end the stream.
I mean, we're talking for more than 3 hours. That's good. That was good. And really good discussion. I mean, I
enjoyed that.
Yeah, really good. I mean, much better than talking to professors in university who.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really.